Master, hello, I have a question. Does the scientist's desire for knowledge count as a form of greed? If they didn't have this desire for knowledge, if people didn't have this desire, would it hinder the progress of our society? Okay, thank you.
As I mentioned at the beginning just now, whether it's scientists, Buddhists, or people from other walks of society, if the pursuit is for oneself, then this is a selfish desire without question. But if the pursuit of knowledge or learning is for humanity, for others, or even includes seeking some material wealth and so on, then is that really considered desire from this perspective? On the surface, it appears to be a desire, but in reality, it is not actually called desire in that way in the Buddhist sense. In Buddhism, there is the Mahayana and the Theravada, as I mentioned earlier. In Theravada Buddhism, monks are not allowed to touch gold. In Mahayana Buddhism, if someone offers gold as a donation and this gold is used to help sentient beings, and I say, I'm a monk, I can't touch it, then that would also be breaking the precepts. You must touch it. If it benefits sentient beings, then accumulating wealth is also acceptable. So it's the same for scientists. If you are doing it for your own benefit, that is a kind of desire. For your own reputation, your own wealth. Nowadays, many academicians, some people are exploring just for themselves. Actually, this is not good. But if it is for sentient beings, for humanity, then in Buddhism, on the surface, it may look like a kind of desire, but in reality, it is a form of wisdom.
Venerable Master, hello. I am from the College of Forestry. Just last night, I watched a film called Oceans. The first half was about an underwater world, which was incredibly beautiful. As it unfolded before my eyes, I was amazed and deeply moved. But when I got to the latter part, it was about the pursuit of desire by modern people, like with sharks, and also people's desire for food or their value-driven desires just keep increasing. After cutting off the shark fins, they would throw the helpless bodies back into the ocean. And then the bodies would just rot there. When I saw this, I felt really heartbroken in my heart. In the first half, when it was showing us, it was such a beautiful scene full of hope, suggesting a kind of progress towards something better. But as it went on, desire kept growing stronger and stronger in an alarming way. I wonder if in some situations development and protection are somewhat mutually exclusive or at odds with each other. I'd like to ask this question. Thank you.
What you said is true and quite insightful. Here we say we can't pollute the environment, but we also need sustainable development for our future. Actually, these aren't contradictory if properly understood. Because if what we are developing is truly what humanity genuinely and in fact needs, and we do our very best not to harm or negatively impact nature under such a premise, then if human society wants to develop, that is in fact a form of sustainable development. But if, for the sake of immediate gains and quick profits, for example, some leaders or entrepreneurs, in order to achieve various goals in their plans, exploit resources over a short period of time with intense extraction, on the surface, it might seem meaningful for a while, but in the end, if it creates contradictions for all of humanity or for the whole city, this is only development on the surface, but in reality, it is a form of destruction that causes harm to our resources. So whether in big cities or in many countries nowadays, there are actually many serious contradictions between development and exploitation that need to be resolved carefully. Take certain countries, for example, including Bhutan, they are unwilling to open up. Why are they unwilling to open up? Some people think it's because they are ignorant. Since the whole world is developing this way, but they, until quite recently, did not even have access to television just a few years ago. Because television, as we know, directly impacts and influences many of our brain cells. In the end, people end up becoming worse. That's why they want to preserve a particularly ancient tradition in their culture with great care. But ultimately, even countries like Japan deeply admire them for this noble effort and dedication. So sometimes we think this is backward or old-fashioned from our modern perspective. But within these ancient practices, there may actually be a more beautiful and higher level of development. So regarding this issue, perhaps we need to keep our eyes open. We should analyze specific issues in detail to truly understand the pros and cons between them.
Hello, Master. I'm from the School of Forestry. I'd like to ask you a question related to my own field of study. Our main focus is on researching economic forests. For example, in our last class, our teacher mentioned eucalyptus trees. In forestry, we can harvest eucalyptus after just 5 years of planting. Economically, this is promising, but many say planting eucalyptus causes significant environmental pollution. A single eucalyptus acts like a water pump. There's also a saying, no birds fly above eucalyptus, no grass grows beneath them. Regarding the conflict between economic benefits and the environment, may I ask, Master, what is your opinion on this? Thank you.
I just shared my views on this as well from my perspective. Actually, whether it's logging or planting now in any region, on the one hand, there should be specific research and analysis by professionals with expertise. After conducting analysis, we should be able to determine whether it is ultimately beneficial or harmful in the long run. Of course, there are some issues that we may really understand in principle quite well, but in reality, it doesn't help much at all in practice. Nowadays, many problems in society are tied to economic interests, and everyone is well aware of this. But for some things, there's just really nothing we can do. Sometimes we're caught off guard. So I'm thinking, especially when we include the current deforestation, in fact, in remote areas, such as some ethnic minority regions far from cities, they compete with each other without restraint. I build a wooden house, and he builds a wooden house too. The pillars of my wooden house are thicker than his, and the height is taller than his by several meters. Because among people in the same field or of the same type, in particular, there is always a need to compare. For example, when you're in college, college students compare clothes, compare shoes, and so on with each other constantly. They compare hair, whose hair looks better, and so on in every detail. When you're in the workplace, you start comparing with your colleagues again in different ways. Who has a car, who has a house, who has what? People compare these things too. Even in remote places, people still compare with one another constantly. So this kind of competition directly leads to environmental destruction on a significant scale. These issues may be related to many professional fields to some extent.
Venerable Master, I am a student at Guangxi University's College of Forestry. After listening to your insights on low desire and low carbon, I have gained a lot, but I have always had a question. Nowadays, we college students are aware of some basic environmental protection knowledge, such as saving water, not littering, and not using disposable chopsticks. These are all common sense to us. We all know these things. We know this common sense, but very few people put it into practice. I would like to ask Master, through what kind of practice can we actually do these things, given that we already understand this common sense? Thank you.
I think that nowadays, the concept of low-carbon living is something we must first recognize as very important. If we remain unaware of it, no matter how many mistakes we make over time, in the end, we still won't truly realize it for ourselves in our hearts. But if we do know, for example, today, there are a few hundred of us here, and each of us knows that we shouldn't waste resources in the future. Then when these few hundred people go out into the world, I think some of you here are teachers, or perhaps you work in education, and you will have many, many opportunities. And in these opportunities, you can also promote these principles. So one person tells 10, 10 tell 100. Education has always worked this way. We continuously promote these meaningful and valuable ideas. And in different places, we can establish various environmental protection groups. Each group can begin with this kind of slogan. This is very important because in the past, everyone was especially wasteful, often using resources carelessly. But since last year and the year before, particularly among young people and college students across the country, they have all been calling on everyone not to be so wasteful. In recent years, even when we eat meals, I'm not entirely sure about Guangxi, but in other places, I remember back in 1995, Singapore was already doing very well in this regard. In China, it wasn't that good yet, but now, after we finish eating, if there are leftovers, we immediately pack them up to take home. This kind of mindset is what we need. It also applies to things like disposable chopsticks and other waste. We should try to reduce these as much as possible in the future. I saw some data saying that nowadays the average person produces 1 ton of garbage per year. That's really frightening. So for some issues, having a mindset of saving and conserving will definitely be helpful in our daily lives, little by little. In this way, as individuals, we can truly make a meaningful difference for the entire planet Earth and for our global society as well. Many valuable ideas in the world, at the very beginning, are actually not recognized by everyone. It's just a small number of organizations and a few people who start to promote them. Eventually, everyone comes to share this common mindset.
Master, hello. I'm a student from the College of Forestry at Guangxi University. Development and protection, development and destruction are all inherently full of contradictions. Even if we advocate for a low-carbon lifestyle and sustainable development, we still can't completely avoid some degree of destruction. I would like to ask you, Master, how do you view sustainable development, pollution prevention, or low-carbon living in modern society? What kind of standard would be considered a saturated state of low carbon that we should aim for? Thank you, Master, very much for your guidance.
Actually, the principle behind your question is something I may have already touched on in previous topics during our discussion earlier. But I believe that in the future, everyone should, when it comes to low carbon and related sustainability issues, the many contradictions between sustainable development and environmental destruction, first fundamentally understand them with clarity and insight. After gaining this understanding, then in our daily lives, we may also need to learn about some practical situations that arise around us. In different situations, we need to have our own guiding principles that are clear. I often think this way myself quite frequently. As a monk, I can recite my sutras and I can meditate calmly and peacefully. I am able to meditate. There's no need for me to go to many cities or interact with a lot of people. But sometimes I think, if I just sit here like this, actually, this is quite honestly a kind of Hinayana mindset according to Buddhism. I'm afraid that I can't go everywhere, otherwise people will talk about me. I can't talk to many people, otherwise if I say something wrong, people will laugh at me. This is actually a selfish mindset. Even though I'm just a small individual, when I go to other places and talk to others about environmental protection, about protecting animals, it might not have a huge impact, but even if it makes just a small difference, for example, if I used to like killing living beings, but through a shared learning experience, I no longer want to harm animals, then that is also a responsibility of mine. So I think each of us should probably pay close attention to the very important issues between sustainable development and environmental protection. First, we should try to understand these things in our daily lives. I believe that many of the university students here will have a certain amount of power in the future and will have some wealth as well. When you have a certain level of capability, that's when you should use your advantages. You should, within your own sphere of influence and among those currently under your leadership or guidance, whether it's for humanity or for the whole world, try to shine your light in some way. I think this is something that everyone should be able to do. Maybe during your student years you have some beautiful dreams, hopes, and aspirations. But when you actually enter the workforce, you may be pressured by family, society, and all kinds of relationships. In the end, it might be difficult for your original dreams to come true. But no matter what happens in life, right now, everyone needs to have a learning attitude and also a firm determination to put things into practice with real commitment. Actually, I often think that a person's willpower is very important in achieving goals. If we spend every day in a muddled, confused, and aimless state, aside from eating, getting dressed, and occasionally studying a little bit when they're in a good mood, then at those times when they're not feeling happy or content, They spend every day making phone calls and sending all kinds of random messages, watching TV series, wasting time like this every day. Life doesn't have much meaning, though I wouldn't say it's completely meaningless. We should do something meaningful. Right now, many young people, some of the things they do are meaningless. I've actually seen a lot of college students and young people like this. Even though what he does isn't something huge, it's still very meaningful.
Master, hello. I am a student from the Sino-Canadian College. I would like to ask you, what are your thoughts on Guizhentang's practice of extracting bile from live bears? And do you believe Guizhentang's claim that the bears don't suffer during bile extraction but actually feel comfortable? Do you believe this kind of statement? Thank you.
I just didn't understand. What?
Guizhentang's live bear bile extraction.
I see. I didn't really understand what you meant just now. Sometimes, since we live in the mountains far from cities, we don't know about these things very well or in detail. I do have my own personal opinion on this matter you mentioned. In the past, I wrote a book called The Miserable World. In The Miserable World, I included many cases based on what I saw and heard at the time in various places, including, for example, people digging out monkey brains at the dining table and so on. There have been many terrible and cruel tragedies like these throughout history in different regions. In situations like this, from the perspective of animal protection, I think any act of cruel slaughter, any act of cruel killing, is something we humans should not do under any circumstances. If humans really do too much of this kind of cruel behavior, then in the end, whether it's a group or an individual, there will inevitably be some retribution of some sort. This is absolute, and I have many reasons for this belief based on observation. So personally, I believe that there are so many important environmental protection and animal protection organizations, dedicated groups working around the globe today. I truly rejoice in what they do. Why is that? Every animal is exactly the same as humans. Perhaps this idea is related to some people's upbringing and may not necessarily be accepted by everyone, but I have 100 reasons to say that there is no real difference from humans. Animals can feel pain and happiness, just as humans experience happiness and pain in their lives. If we begin to trample on their lives and their feelings without any remorse or consideration, then at a certain point, humans will inevitably suffer pain as well in similar ways. That's why we especially hope to protect our environment in every possible way we can, and likewise to protect the animals around us. They are our good friends and fellow sentient beings. This is also something I hope for, that all of you here from a young age do not develop a liking for killing living beings. The Buddhist principle is one of great compassion and loving kindness. To completely abstain from eating meat, maybe you can't do that right now, and I don't demand that of you, there is no such requirement. But even if you do eat meat, don't order animals to be killed for you. Otherwise, if you order too many animals, your own health will suffer in the future. This is bad for your family, and your future prospects will be even less bright.
Hello, Master. I am a student from the School of Journalism and Communication. Today, your topic is environmental protection. You mentioned that we should restrain our desires. I've read in some books before that in Tibetan Buddhism there is a practice called secret practice, Mikyo, which involves things like fasting and abstaining from water, for example, using rather harsh methods of practice to achieve the goal of restraining desires. I'd ask you, have you ever undergone such practices before? Thank you so much.
Actually, in Tibetan Buddhism, there really isn't a specific or particular practice or tradition that involves not eating food or not drinking water at all. Up to now, I have never practiced such things on my own. However, perhaps what you mean is the so-called 8 Precepts Retreat. The 8 Precepts Retreat is not unique to Tibetan Buddhism. It is also commonly observed in Chinese Han Buddhism. The Buddha specifically mentioned in the sutras the practice of not eating after noon. This is actually intended for monastics, in fact, not eating after noon. Later on, I wondered why the Buddha said not to eat in the afternoon in his time long ago. Actually, not eating in the afternoon is very much in line with medical science for the human body, according to modern research and understanding. As we just mentioned about observing the precepts, this is actually a form of training, a way to restrain desires. You could put it that way in simple terms. But there is another kind called the Pratimoksha precepts, which are quite different. Once you have received these precepts through proper ordination, you will no longer fall into the realm of hungry ghosts or into poverty in future lives as a result of this. There are specific merits associated with these precepts that have been described clearly by the masters. At the same time, we can also achieve a relatively pure way of living. So I think in Tibetan Buddhism, as we understand it, of course, there is also a practice where through a special type of medicinal pill, one can go for an extended period of time without eating. I've seen this before, though I haven't tried it myself. There was a monastic living in the mountains. In our area, there is a place called Danba Sacred Mountain. He has already passed away. That old Dharma master went 15 days without even a drop of water, yet his mental state and overall condition were excellent. This is a special kind of practice. This practice also clearly demonstrates the significant power of Dharma. Of course, at the same time, it may also serve the purpose of restraining desires.
Hello, Master. I am a student from the College of Forestry at Guangxi University. I have a question I'd like to ask you. A girl before me also mentioned it. In recent years, our global climate has been undergoing abnormal changes. This has led to various secondary disasters. Meteorologists have analyzed this situation. They say it's the result of industrial development by humans over the past few hundred years. Just as you mentioned earlier, the depletion of the ozone layer, the rise in sea levels, and the melting of polar ice and snow. Can we stop the worsening of the climate by limiting and controlling human desires, perhaps in this way? Thank you for your guidance.
What humanity wants to do now, at this particular moment in time, may not necessarily be achievable. But in fact, you might also be aware of this. The current climate warming is also known as the greenhouse effect around the world by experts everywhere. The most important cause is meat consumption, eating meat in modern society without restraint or awareness of the consequences. This is something many scientists have repeatedly emphasized through their research. If humans continue to eat meat, on one hand, a lot of plants, including those used to raise cattle and pigs, in industrial farming operations worldwide, a significant amount of these natural resources are consumed by them, and that's one reason. Another reason is that the gases they emit are very serious. So, if we can adopt a vegetarian diet, although some people may think that being vegetarian is something only Buddhist lay people or monks do, that's actually not the case. In fact, now many astronomers and many experts believe that being vegetarian truly brings significant and meaningful benefits when it comes to combating global warming. Moreover, being vegetarian is also beneficial for one's own health. I often say this. Many people think a vegetarian diet is lacking in nutrition, but in fact it provides complete nutrition because the nutrients in plants go directly into your body. For example, we like to eat beef. So where does the cow actually get its nutrition? Well, it's mainly from plants. Cows don't eat beef, nor do they eat other kinds of meat. Why are their bodies so strong and robust? Because they eat grass. So we too can eat plants ourselves if we want to. If we eat plants just like cows do, there's absolutely no problem with nutrition. So I think if many people stopped eating beef and only ate plants, which generally have a much lower environmental impact, then global warming would definitely change in some way.
Hello, Master. I am a student from the School of Computer and Electronic Information at Guangxi University. Today, the subject you spoke about is hoping that each of us can restrain our own desires, meaning some unnecessary desires, right? For example, as college students, our environmental awareness is relatively good. But some companies and manufacturers in society don't have such strong environmental awareness. In fact, it's quite the opposite. A lot of the pollution in society is actually caused by some of these manufacturers. How can we raise their environmental awareness as well? If their environmental awareness today could be significantly improved, then we could fundamentally address our ongoing environmental pollution issues. But their schedules are also pretty tight. They're busy making money all day. Is there any effective way for us, perhaps, to help raise their environmental awareness so that it's as strong as ours, as college students ourselves? because as college students or students in general, we have access to education or opportunities like listening to your lecture today, so we have the chance to receive this kind of education, but it's different for them. How can we help them improve their environmental awareness as well? Thank you.
Actually, environmental awareness is a topic that has been actively promoted for the past few decades. In the past, there was generally no need for environmental protection. When we were young, we never even saw trash cans, as there was simply no need for them at that time. Especially in Tibetan areas, the environment was very clean and untouched, with no pollution of water or air. The natural surroundings were always fresh and pure. But in recent years, with the continuous development of science and technology, as these advancements keep emerging, I think, first of all, the work should ideally start with university teachers as well as students. This is because many of the most critical issues in society should be discovered and identified by college students and people in the intellectual community. Although the business community holds a certain status and position due to its substantial wealth and broad social influence, they do have a certain standing and place in society, but they might be busy making money or occupied with other matters. In society, there are the business sector, the political sector, and scholars. These three groups together make up the structure. First, at the level of scholars, we need to understand the key issues facing society today. Once we understand them, we should promote awareness in various settings. After spreading awareness gradually, whether it's the government or the business community, we can begin to impart this important knowledge and understanding to them in meaningful ways. For this purpose, I think, whether in schools or in other parts of society, as long as it's within reasonable and legal boundaries, everyone should organize different kinds of forums. Nowadays, there are many environmental protection forums, and at these forums, we invite entrepreneurs and other notable, influential individuals so that they can truly feel the importance of environmental protection today. Once people have found that sense of connection, it becomes much easier to take action. If we haven't really found that feeling for ourselves yet, and it's still just something theoretical, it might not actually have much of an effect. So perhaps, just like in some foreign countries now, especially in the United States and the United Kingdom, where they started paying attention to environmental protection earlier, because they also developed excessively for that reason. Now, many college students are currently seizing on this important and crucial point in their studies. After understanding this key issue, we can actively promote it in a variety of different environments and situations. In the end, it will definitely have significance to varying degrees.
Venerable Master, hello. I am a sophomore student at the College of Agriculture. Right now, we are studying general entomology. By our junior year, we can start researching some pesticides. Personally, I feel that the continuous development of new pesticides is contrary to the principles of non-killing, low greed, and environmental protection. But at the same time, we need these pesticides to improve agricultural products. What is your view on this issue? Thank you.
I'm not an expert in this field, so when many of you ask me professional questions, it puts me in a difficult position, to be honest. Well, regarding these pesticides, I've heard that here in Guangxi, when it comes to pesticides and their widespread usage in agriculture, there's both public demand and also the local government working together on this in meaningful collaboration. The issue of pesticides and human health as it affects communities is actually different from other places. There are some positive aspects that stand out clearly, including your crops in many of the farmlands here in various areas throughout the region. As far as their impact on human health goes, up to this point in time, it should be quite good. Actually, pesticides are a very big issue in today's world, because some pesticides, from the perspective of an agricultural college or a dedicated researcher, we have no choice but to explore. And in the end, we ultimately have to use them in practice. But after using them, the most important thing is to ensure our human health and well-being first, without question. If people can't maintain their health at a basic level or sustain it, then all pesticides become poisons, which is extremely dangerous to human life. So now, in our society, development and desire are indeed in conflict with each other quite clearly. At this time, many factories, including some pharmaceutical plants, They claim it's medicine on the outside, but in reality, it is actually directly harmful to the human body. This is a deeper level from a research perspective. We must ensure very good protection for human health as our top priority in everything. Under this premise, I think research can be conducted to varying degrees, depending on the specific circumstances involved. However, in Tibetan areas or in other more remote, distant and less accessible places, vegetables and crops are quite abundant in this region, and they are also basically harmless to human health in most cases. Of course, I've heard that nowadays many farmers are increasingly unwilling to grow crops anymore for various reasons. Because if you grow crops, you have to rely on the weather every day, wondering if it will rain. So now, many farmers are unwilling to farm and instead go to the cities to work. As a result, large areas of farmland in many regions are left without being cultivated. In the future, even if you come up with new research, there might not be anyone left to farm.
Master, hello. I'm a student from the School of Materials Science. I just wanted to say something. Today, what we are studying is environmental pollution prevention and sustainable development. Yes, today we have learned and strengthened our awareness of environmental protection. I feel that people like us, our generation, tend to be a bit restless or impatient. For example, today I learned and enhanced my awareness of environmental protection through this lecture here. But after a few days, it's as if I didn't learn anything at all, and everything is forgotten. Environmental protection starts with small details. For us college students sitting here today, even if we listen to your lecture with great interest, after a few days, we start doing things that harm the environment again. Or for example, take me, if in another 2 years, I will graduate and step into society, facing all kinds of pressures from society. If we still maintain the habit, I feel that the power of society is so strong. If I still hold on to this way of thinking now, while some people in society, I think from what I see in reality, many people in society are just chasing after money in every possible way without any other concern. If I still keep such a simple mindset, if I keep such a simple mindset about life and values, I won't be able to make money. How will I support my family and meet their needs? I think this is a contradiction. I'd like to ask you to explain it to me.
Your question, actually, I touched on it a bit during my lecture, if you recall. On one hand, you students have very pure thoughts right now, but those may not be achievable once you enter society and face practical challenges. However, it's also possible. For example, today's speech or another teacher's speech on this topic might make you truly realize its importance in a lasting way. If you genuinely realize its importance, then maybe you'll never forget it for the rest of your life. In some of my own experiences, when I listened carefully to some highly respected teachers or some master's lectures in the past, even if it was just one class or a 2 or 3 day course in the end, for my whole life I could benefit from that. My perspective changed greatly. There were such moments, truly. That's why I just said that simply having an understanding is really not enough. You have to train yourself millions of times. Training is very important. If you don't train, after a couple of days, it might just pass by like clouds before your eyes, and nothing will remain. If you think this makes sense and is very important, then with this kind of issue, we really need to keep going further and deeper. Of course, our time is limited. In 2 hours, I simply can't possibly cover everything, including what a teacher might tell you over 3 or 4 years. It's just a reminder. In reality, the key lies with the individual. Many of you students, some people say they're not really studying at university, they're just playing around. If you don't study properly during your 4 years at university, then it's just 4 years of playing. But if you truly grasp some of the principles taught in university and continue to explore them further in society, then in the end, you'll definitely remember this when you're out in the real world facing actual challenges. If you remember this deep in your heart, I think, as long as you have a conscience, it's not necessarily impossible to make money in an ethical way that works. Nowadays, there are many extremely civilized people in society, and indeed there are some highly respected entrepreneurs or leaders in various fields who feel a sense of responsibility towards society and in many other aspects. They are not out to cause harm or deliberately create destruction, nor do they insist on making money through unreasonable or unethical means. In fact, actually making money that way doesn't continue for a long time. If you approach things with a sense of responsibility to society, the money you earn will be much more stable and sustainable over time. So, in my opinion, it's best for everyone to choose, even if you can't make a lot of money right away in the beginning, to still do work that is responsible to society and benefits others meaningfully. In this way, gradually over time, you will gain benefits in various different aspects.
Hello, Master. I am from the College of Light Industry and Food Engineering. Your speech today was very honored and inspiring. The main point here is really about being content with what you have and having fewer desires, right? As a university student nowadays, I feel that in this society, maybe because of society's expectations, I think that sometimes desire can actually, in fact, be a kind of motivation for positive change. If everyone is content and has few desires, wouldn't that affect their personal development and limit their potential growth? So I'd like to kindly ask you to elaborate on this for me a bit more. How do we balance personal development with being content and having fewer desires? How do we strike this balance? Thank you.
On the surface, if we don't have any desires, it might be that we have nothing to strive for personally in any meaningful way, as you said from your perspective earlier. But in reality, pursuing life, pursuing a noble existence with purpose and direction, being truly content and having only a few desires in life does not actually conflict with our pursuit of beautiful and inspiring ideals. Buddhism is not about muddling through life all day long without purpose, or not seeking anything at all. It's not like that. As long as it benefits society and everyone, as I mentioned earlier, even monastics can interact with many more people and various individuals, and make use of many social resources. This is completely acceptable. As lay people, as ordinary individuals, as university students, excessive desire and wastefulness, I think, are truly unreasonable and unjustifiable. If you live a normal life while pursuing your ideals, this kind of positivity is something we very much need. This positivity is also a kind of motivation. If you lack motivation, in this society you might end up muddling through life every day with nothing to strive for at all. This is not something we emphasize either in our teachings at all. You must have something to pursue, but this pursuit should not be excessive greed or excessive destruction of society that harms others around you. We need to understand this. Anything that harms humanity or damages society's property, we do not pursue. If, through diligent effort or simply by working normally, you earn money or wealth, these are things I still genuinely believe are definitely worth pursuing. This is not at all contrary to the Buddhist perspective.
Due to time constraints today, we will conclude the Q&A session here. We are deeply grateful to the Dharma Master for using such broad knowledge and profound insight to answer the doubts and feelings in everyone's hearts. Let us express our gratitude once again with a warm round of applause.